behalf of the organizing committee, would like to welcome you all to this online lecture series. This is the 13th lecture in the lecture series, and today we are actually very glad and honored to have Dr. Gautam Karmakar as our resource person. Uh, Before handing over the session to Dr. Karmakar, I just would like to introduce him to our participants. Dr. Karmakar is an assistant professor of English at Bodabajar Bikrampur Memorial College, affiliated to Sidhu Kanu Birsa University, West Bengal, India. He has completed his PhD from the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, National Institute of Technology, Durgapur. Uh, his essays, research papers, book reviews, and poems have been published in many reputed international journals. He has taken interviews of many notable Indian poets writing in English. Apart from organizing one international conference in India, he has presented papers in many international conferences in India, England, Germany, Slovenia, and other European countries. He has edited 4 critical books on Indian poetry in English. He seeks interest in Indian writing in English, South Asian literature, film studies, Marxism and post-Marxism, eco-critical studies, Dalit literature, and cultural studies. We are really fortunate to have such a distinguished speaker among us, and a burgeoning scholar, critic, and a poet. Dr. Karmakar, over to you. Please enlighten us and our students through your erudite deliberation. Please.
Thanks a lot, Pothik, and I want to thank the organizer. Am I audible?
Yes, clearly you are audible.
Okay. So I want to thank organizers and the whole team working behind this virtual platform for putting together this wonderful lecture series, and thanks for the warm invitation and at the same time introducing me with your students. The guidance that you are all providing during this severely distress testing time is praiseworthy. And today, although the title of my talk, it's alienation, power, and resistance, relocating the call of ideology in Bertolt Brecht, Mother Courage and Her Children, demands certain theoretical interventions. But Pothik told me yesterday that I should talk more on epic theater. And frankly and honestly speaking, 1 hour or 2 hours are not sufficient enough to understand the nuances of epic theater only. So let me tell you the rudimentary things about epic theater, and if time allows, then I will tell you the way by which you can do a Marxist or a Foucauldian reading of Mother Courage, which I was supposed to tell you today in an elaborative way. Pothik, I want to share my screen. Is it visible to all?
Yes, it's visible.
It's in full screen now?
Yes, it's in full screen now. Okay. Yes, Gautam, that's in full screen right now.
Yes, so the basic nuances, first of all, let me tell you that the place, already know that the summer is known to us all. But still, I am telling you that the play set in Europe in during the 13 Years' War, and Mother Courage, canteen women, Pulsar Kurt with her 3 children, in the wake of the army, trading with the soldiers, attempting to make profit from the war, and we are first introduced to recruiting officer and a sergeant. And at the same time, we are introduced to other characters also who compete during the difficulty time of recruiting other soldiers for the war. So it's a kind of war play, but at the same time, let's try to show the anti-war elements in the play through his intervention of epic theater. So Mother Courage started pulled out and distracting her, and at the same time with the promise of some kind of transaction in amount of money, and the recruiting officer leads Elip, one of his son also, and one of our children is gone now. So in course of the journey, we'll see that as the year 17 of the 17 years war it's going on, there are very little food and supplies left, and the cook, inheriting a lodge from his mother in Utrecht, suggest Mother Courage to help him operate it. So in course of the journey, we'll see that at the end, Catherine will also be shot dead, and actually Catherine warns the town folk by beating a drum on the rooftop in the morning, but Catherine saves the town at the same time is shot to death. And the next morning, Mother Courage singing a lullaby for her daughter's soul as the peasants bury the corpse, and the play concludes in 1636 with Mother Courage harnessing herself to the canteen wagon as I must get back to business. This is the crux of the play. I must get back into business in spite of the fact that all the children were killed during the process of his journey, of her journey, of their journey. And she claims before resuming the course. So, first of all, it's a play. It's a play where we can see that Brecht had used so many of his techniques, and here Brecht is the key figure of our time, and all the theater work today at the same point starts to return to his statements and achievements, as it is told by Peter. So Brecht was born. He was born in Germany in 1819 and died at the age of 58 in 1956. He was a poet, a playwright, a theater director, and his most famous plays include Life of Galileo, Mother Courage and Her Children, and Thousand Chalk Circle. And Brecht's groundbreaking directing style has been hugely influential to many directors and designers over the decades. And playwright David Elgar once said that Brecht is a part of the air we breathe. So Brecht's work has been very popular till the 50s, 60s, and the 70s, but it is slightly less fashionable today. However, this influence is still present in much of the theatre, and many would argue that Brecht changed the face of the modern theatre. Let me now come to the epic theatre, this concept of epic theatre. And as I am addressing to the UG and PG students, although I have come to know that this play is not in your UG syllabus, it is in your PG syllabus. But so I guess certain more theoretical nuances will be beneficial to you all, and you will all come to know why Brecht has adopted this kind of technique. So before going to the historical context, socio-political context of introducing epic theatre, let me tell you the basic preamble. It's some kind that the epic theatre, the main practitioner was Brecht, and from of didactic drama, it's kind of presenting a series of loosely connected scenes, and at the same time, it avoids illusion of interrogatory line to address the audience directly with the analysis, argument, or documentation. And the alien effect technique is designed to distance the audience from emotional involvement in the play through jolting reminders of the artificiality of the theatrical performance. Am I audible to all? Because at present I'm unable to see the screen or the comments or anything. If there is any kind of problem, please unmute and tell me. Then I will understand.
You are
Am I
audible.
audible? And my slides are visible?
Yes, you are audible, but I think that there is some connectivity problem. That's why it has occurred.
Slides are not visible.
No. Slides are visible. Clearly.
It is visible, sir.
Okay. Okay. And at the same time, it displays realism and to show the hidden agenda of the theater of that time. So now let's go to the structure, staging, music, and acting of that epic theater. And before going to that structure, let me tell you that see the political background behind it. Just like the end of the Second World War II, Second World War, which created the atmosphere for the development of the theater of the actor in France. Now it's not possible for me to give you the basic nonsense of theater absurd, but at the same time, it's very much relevant. And the First World War's end created a sense of disillusionment in Germany. And Germany's demise in the war and the helping psychological situation created a case for German expressionism. Now, this expressionistic technique created a kind of aesthetic space. And the time after the First World War, creation of this true patriotic spirit in Germany. And that stimulates the materialistic rise of nationalism and the rise of the Nazi regime in the country. And we all know the activities of Nazi regime. And this, in effect, also created a space for the best involvement as a medical officer in the First World War and the situation. Then, if any witness has a strong influence on him as a young man, and he could not understand the reason behind this kind of warfare, and he could also not stomach the capitalistic structure of the society and the heartless drive for money it entails. This is why the dialectic of Marxist approach is so much clear in his earlier works. And if you go through his text like Man is Man, then you can see that from the very beginning he has taken some kind of Marxist approach, and that Marxist concept, which can see pattern in history as well as the class structural conflict and the movement of the career in course of the journey, that will rise as a winner from the battle seem to be the answer for text. At the same time, man could actively change his fate. We all know that. That's something that was not in the case of naturalism or realism or the theater of the absurd. So according to Marxism or according to Marxist praxis, that all the causes, results, and the relationships are a dynamic process, and it can be in a constant state of flux, and it can be changed. So it is therefore clear how this type of thoughts were used by Brecht, and at the same time, especially in his historification and historificational techniques in the text. And Brecht thought that communism was somewhat some kind of logical solution for the economic and political problems in Europe, and as well as the problems that arose from the different structures of the society. So one of the most important concepts of communism. Now, if I tell you for this communism, then you have to read the concept of dialectics, which comes from Hegel. And this term implies a duality which are two opposite poles, but they exist together. They exist together. And this duality forms a kind of basic of the dramatic material that Brecht used in his plays. And the coexistence of opposites and the merging of thesis and antithesis, and the fact that order cannot be conceived without the disorder in effect, this dramatic ambiguity somewhat created an ironic essence for the drama as well as for Brecht also. And Brecht used Marxist dialectic to create a unified and integrated structure and form in the text. So this is derived from a belief that the context determines the structure of the play. And in political terms, it means that the economic structure of the play, such as the capitalism, it determines the social, political, and cultural identity of all the characters. So from this context, we know that we have come to know that Brecht was a Marxist and made his theater highly political in nature. He wanted his theater to spark an interest in his audience perception of the world. He didn't want his audience to sit passively and get lost in the show story. This is what we see or what we feel while seeing some kind of stories or some kind of movies or drama sitting there. But he wants to make them think and question the world they live in. It's kind of creating a lasting impact upon memory. And he encouraged them to be critical of society. His work often been mischievous, provocative, and at the same time ironic. Brecht wanted his audience to remain objective and unemotional during his plays so that they could make certain rational, at the same time judgmental political remarks about his work. And to this, he invented a range of theoretical devices, and one of the prime devices, epic theater. Now, you can ask me the question, why it is termed as epic theater? Why it is epic? This term epic comes from Edwin Piscator, who coined it during the first year as a director of Berlin's Volksbühne. And Piscator aimed to encourage playwrights to address issues related to contemporary existence. So this new subject matter creates some kind of documentary effect also, and there is some kind of audience interaction and strategies to cultivate an objective response. So epic theater is a kind of political theater that address contemporary issues, and although later in his life he preferred to call it a kind of dialectical theater. Rather calling it as epic theater, to call it some kind of dialectical theater, and which he believed that classical approaches to the theater was some kind of escapist movement. Yes, we are all thinking like that, seeing a drama, seeing a movie, seeing something, seeing a story, and after some time we used to forget it. We tend to forget every other things. Nowadays we are telling, we are gossiping, we are doing so many remarks on the suicide of Sushant Singh Rajput, but in course of the journey we will forget. We will. That's the basic human nature. So he was more interested in fact and reality rather than being some kind of escapist. And epic theater doesn't attempt to lay down a tidy plot and a story, but leaves issue unresolved, so that the audience can think about the certain possible solution, confronting the audience with very uncomfortable questions even. So Brecht created and formulated several postulating in the entire forces system, and he was a German poet and playwright and theater performer, one of the most prominent figure he was in that time. And he tried, and the pleasure, according to him, may be spiritual and some kind of physical, depending on the level of evolution of the theater, and at the same time, it's a kind of a response on part of it towards the society. And with the change in pleasure, theater, the definition of theater changes. As this change, according to Brecht, is a dialectic. It's dialectic because human society has been evolving and transforming during the history in aspect of civilization. Now, if you want to read it, you have to go to the Hegelian teleological history, and at the same time, you have to go through Hannah Arendt's concept of history, and at the same time, you have to go through Benedict Anderson's imagined communities. But due to the lack of time, I'm not going to those, because so many things that to be told to them, and I don't know whether I will be able to reach to those points. So, and at the same time, we have to remember one thing, that the pleasure of Brechtian theater intersect with the catharsis of Aristotelian theater. Now we know the basic concept of Aristotle, what the concept of theater according to Aristotle, and where some kind of catharsis will be there. It means some kind of purification of passion, that according to him some kind of pathemata it can be called, and through mercy that is Elias, and to fear that is Phobos. So nevertheless, the distinct between Brechtian pleasure and Aristotelian pleasure or the catharsis lies in some kind of purification, that dialects of purification, which according to Brecht is some kind of pleasure in itself, and it's create a pleasure instead of to. So Brecht's definition of catharsis, which is achieved through tragedy, infers directly to a conclusion that Brechtian pleasure is not in itself a simple pleasure that is achieved through theater, but rather a path, a discovery of new values in human society, which provokes pleasure to the part of the spectator. And the pleasure should be didactic in nature. And if we go through some of the books, you can note it down. It's like Martin Eslin's Brecht choice of the evil. Hello.
Sir, your voice is breaking. Sir, please use the headphone.
I'm using it. Am I audible now? Hello?
Yes,
Am I audible?
You are audible.
Okay, okay, okay. So let me tell you two, three names. Which books you can refer to understand the historical and political context behind this epic theater. You have to go through Brecht's choice of evils, and then based on theater, it's by Bertolt Brecht, even the development of his aesthetic. And at the same time, also, I do believe in decolonial pedagogical system. While I am referring you to books written by the Western writers on Brecht, at the same time, you should go through the book of Anjala Maharishi. It's a comparative study between Brechtian and classical Indian theatre. So you will come to understand how Brechtian theatre differs from the classical dramatic forms. Now the question can be asked that why Brecht is important to us. So before going to the concept of why Brecht is important to us, let me tell you that Brecht found the supposedly realistic illusion to be dishonest, and it is that it seduced the audience to accept subliminally its representation of reality in an unchangeable and apolitical view of the world. Now, in the Brechtian play, there will be a structure. It means audience should construct their own interpretation of events. They can read their mind event. Staging, how will be the staging? Audience should see what's happening behind the scenes. It means whatever the movement is going on, to enact the play, all will be enacted in that same stage. There will be a certain adaptation, certain involvement of music that mean to comment on the action, not to act to the mood of the scene. It will comment on the action. It means the music will denote the movement of the action on the comment of the scene. And acting and characters, it will keep the audience critical on the play's heroes. Even the hero of the story has flaws. So what are the elements of epic theater? It's a kind of episodic structure. Then it's a kind of montage. Then this is the main part of my talk about epic theater. Warframe the stack effect. What is mean? Alienation effect. And to create this alienation effect, Brecht has used certain other methods. What are those? Breaking the fourth wall, direct address, narrator or chorus, multi-role, inserting of songs in sharp contrast to the surrounding dialogue, juxtaposition of scenes, that mean humor versus serious theme, introducing scenes using projection or captions, placards, speaking the stage directions, showing the working of theater, changing the stage lights of the auditorium, spas and gestures. Now, what is epic theater then? Brecht's theory, which he went on to call epic theater, was directed against the illusion created by traditional theater, of which the audience witnessed a slice of life. Now, before going to the V effect or the alienation effect, let me tell you some other details of Brecht. And I'm going back to my point that why Brecht is also important, because Brecht is a kind of theater practitioner, and he made and shaped theater in a way that has a huge impact upon its development. And many of his ideas were so revolutionary that they changed the theoretical landscape also. Modern theater owes a lot to his method. And Brecht was against cathartic theater. And he believed that while his audience believed in the action and at the same time on stage and became emotionally involved, they lost the ability to think and to judge. And he wanted his audience to remain objective and this kind of emotional involvement in his story so that they could make considered and rational judgment about any social comment or issues in his work. If we, while watching some kind of movies or plays or anything, if we find ourselves with the story of that plot, then to some extent we tend to forget our rational judgment, we tend to neglect our rational judgment. But if we create a certain kind of distance, then we'll be able to think by introducing or by uh, uh, giving our faculty a shape, our faculty a power to think over the scene. So we should not indulge within the story. We don't have to be emotional. Rather, we have to be rational, logical. That why it is going on in this way, why the hero is suffering, what's the reason behind it. But we often engage that yes, he is suffering. It's because of pain. No, we don't have to look on the past of the stories or the development of the hero's journey. We have to think that the reason behind this, reason behind creating this kind of show. So to do this, he used a range of theoretical, theatrical devices and techniques, and so that the audience were reminded throughout watching the theater. So the first one was the estrangement effect or the alienation effect. This was used to distance the audience from the play and is sometimes called the alienation effect. Brecht didn't want the audience to have any emotional attachment to his character, so he did various things to break it. And he used some of the technique, it's why it is called that Verfremdung effect. That and the V effect, the very first word V, it means a kind of effect, dash effect. It means a kind of distancing effect. It's there is some kind of logical mathematical interpretation behind it, but due to the lack of time, I'm unable to show it to you. This dramatic theory of the German dramatist director Walter Brecht used it, and it involved the use of technique to distance the audience from the emotional involvement. And at the same time, Brecht conceived that this alienation effect not only as a specific aesthetic program, but also has a political mission of the theater, inspired by the philosophies of Hegel and Marx and Victor Slopsky theater and their theory of making it strange or some kind of austerity, or what I suggest you as a theory of defamiliarization, which regarded his method as a way of helping his spectators understand the complex nexus of historical development that is going on along with the societal relationship. And by creating stage effects, there were certain strange, unusual things will be going on, and Brecht intended to assign the audience an active role in the production by forcing the artificial involvement and how this individual element relate to real life events. And in doing so, it was hoped that viewers should distance themselves emotionally from problems that demanded intellectual solution. So let me tell you the devices that is used using that V effect. So it's the V effect that is use the various technique that make sure that it look priority over emotion in his audience. And now I'm reading the slide a bit. He had to make sure that they knew they were there to engage and react to the play rather than to merely enjoy emotionally. That was in front of them. So this is some kind of alienation effect, setting a scene, and here I have given. In later you will come to know so many pictures are there. I want to make it some kind of verbal visual reading, some kind of. So how to achieve that alienation effect? First, through the narration, the narrator can create the alienation effect, and that is carried out by telling the audience what is going on before it does. Banners, placards will be there, sign. It means every other action is going on the stage so that the audience find it very difficult to keep themselves engaged with the emotion of the hero. So many things are going on the stage, and it becomes impossible for the audience to think only about the story. They will be distracted. They are distracting by those activities. So, and what are those activities? Now I will disclose. so many things. Look at the stage. Everything is going on the stage. It's not anything is going on at the back end of the stage. Everything is going on. The screening, the remembering the dialogue even. Some characters are going out. Some characters are coming in. So it's this terminology demands all the activities that is going on that stage, and the devices using the V effect to create that estrangement or alienation effect. That is breaking the wall, montage, narration, coming out of the role of third person narration, speaking the stage direction, direct address, and using placards. At the same time, I'm telling you some kind of Brechtian staging. These the kind of Brechtian staging. So before going to that, let me tell you something about this kind of devices. What does it mean? So first of all, breaking the fourth wall. What is fourth wall? Why we need to break it? If this is where the wall between the audience and the actors on the stage that is broken. There is no such. You can see it. Rather than allowing the audience to sit passively and get lost in the show, it's nothing like that. The actors will sometimes directly address the audience with a speech and comment and the question by breaking the fourth wall. Then what is montage? Short movie clips are put together, often to show factual events. And sometimes clips are edited to juxtapose each other, or sometimes montages are used, the issues the Brits trying to communicate. And it is no accident that montage is a term that we would more readily associate with cinema. Brits consciously borrowed the idea from silent movies. And a montage is a series of short content scenes that grouped immediately after each other, whose juxtaposition or contrast highlight important issues with absolute clarity. So making certain clips together from the silent films and this idea of separate scenes also allows for a focus by the film director and some kind of create a demonstration of the power of montage sequence in those previously 1925 films. And let me name that some kind of Sergei Einstein something who created this kind of pattern, and later in Battleship, Potemkin, and so many other movies it is used. And in the famous sequence, Runaway Baby Courage, it means montage means so many other scenes juxtaposing at the same time, all are seen. The third mechanics that is adopted, that is narration. It is used to remind, narration is used to remind the audience that what they are watching is the presentation of the story. It is made believe. It's make believe to them that yes, it's the presentation of the story, and sometimes the narrator will tell us that what happens in the story before it has happened. So this is the way by which that alienation effect is created, and this is a good way of making sure that we don't become emotionally involved in the action, because we only know that it is going to be happen now. Next, coming out of the role of the third person narration. So commenting upon a character as action is a clear way of reminding the audience of theatricality. For example, let me tell you, midway through a heightened scene, action might break for the actor to comment upon the character in the third person. And always someone is there to give opinion on the role that is going on, that's enacted. So third person narration always gives audience a kind of realistic touch, so that they fail to emotionally attach with the story. Picking the stage effect. What is this? This device was used by Brecht more frequently in rehearsal than performance, and it helps distance the actor from the character they're playing, and it also reminds them, the audience, that they're watching a play, and forces them to study the actions of the character in objective detail. Next, direct address. So what is this? While speaking directly to the audience, it breaks the fourth wall and at the same time destroys any illusion to reality and illusion of reality also. An example could be the moment where the chip in mother carriage, or the mother carriage says to her children that yes, we have to move on, or in the Casualian chalk circle, that baby Michael, if you go through that play also, that if I brought him, so, what should I do? So this kind of thing, that we are addressing the characters directly. There is a point even to make alienation effect, that is using placards, using so many placards. So we all know that a placard, what is a placard? A placard is a kind of sign or additional piece of written information presented on stage. And using placard might be simple as holding up a card or a banner, and is a kind of a placard. I am also presenting something in that way. This all the slides can be used for the effect also. Look, I am also presenting, and look, I am using the placard so that you can think also. If I tell you without showing the PPTs, only I am telling you, sometimes it can be boring also. Sometimes you can emotionally attach with the studios, but while there is a kind of visual and verbal motion is going on, you are tend to think rationally. Sorry. And the musical Miss Saigon, for example, slides so demonstrate the loss of lives in Vietnam War, which was highly effective. And what's important with that, the information carried good way. Now I'm going to the next slide, and that is the Brechtian staging. What's Brechtian staging? It's a kind of multi-rolling stage. It's a split roll, minimal set, costumes, props, symbolic props, lighting. This will be there. Look at this picture. Lighting is another way that we can achieve V effect with it. Brecht like to use hearts white arm reading because the fonts are small. I have to make small to accommodate all this speak and at the same time these points. So I'm reading it loud. The heart's white light, the lighting director of Epic Theatre needs to abandon the idea of hiding sources of light to achieve the effect. Obviously, lighting constantly reminds the audience that they are watching it. And what kind of setting? Setting is very much important. Setting is very important, especially because by putting props in an unrealistic way to achieve VFX, because it makes the audience be aware that they are in theater. Look at the way everything is going on in this way. They are doing the stage at the same. Sometimes the stage is prepared in front of the audience so that it makes the audience aware that yes, they are in theater. The show is going on. Only the actors are acting according to the plot. And why the actors are acting, we have to dive into it. Now, before coming to the comparison between dramatic and epic theater, yes, often we think. So, let me tell you, as I'm dedicating this talk epic theater only. So, you have to know what is multi-rolling then. So multi-rolling is when the actor plays more than one character on stage. And the difference is that the character are marked by changing voice, movement, gestures, body language, and but the audience can clearly see that the same actor has taken more than one role. It's going on in front of the stage. And this means the audience are more aware of the fact that they are watching a presentation of events. And cross-sex casting is also possible. Guys acting as a male character, then he is dressed like a woman and acting some kind of female character. So we don't need to suspend our disbelief. We have come to understand that there is a play. A same actor is enacting different roles. Then there is a split role. It means this is where more than one actor plays the same character. It means, for instance, the role of Mother Courage is played by 2-3 people in the play. The actor playing the main character might rotate from scene to scene, and this keeps the character representation and inhibits the emotional involvement attached on part of the audience. For example, in the movie Chichore, the main character, I failed to remember the name of the main character, that Sushant Singh, it is played by Sushant Singh Rajput, late Sushant Singh Rajput. But so throughout the play, throughout the movie, he is there. So the audience get connected with Sushant. If the same role is enacted, is performed by 2, 3, or 4 actors within a same movie, then it becomes quite tough for the audience to love one particular actor for this one particular role. Because that particular role is enacted by so many actors within the same plot. It's minimal set, costume, props. What is this then? A set means set, costume, and props are all quite simple and representational, and some kind of elaborate costume might mean the sense of theater or pretending something to else was lost. And which we believe in historicism, some certain kind of historicism as a convention of that effect. For example, in Mother Courage, Mother's Court is the National Theatre production is stocked full and with realistic props that Mother Courage would need for authenticity. The Court is the fifth member of the family. Yes, but why it is fifth member of the family? Because it is the main object through which the whole operation is going on. She is selling everything, and the medium was the Court, and the family. According to this, there are so many examples of prop being important in this place also. The lighting. Best believe that in keeping lighting simple, he didn't want the production values to overshadow the message of the work, of his work. He believed in using harsh white light as this illuminates the truth. And at the same time, however, many modern productions do use lighting effect. And the important things is that the audience still see the theater, so that this will see that the production personnel, such as background crew, in action on the stage, everything, rather than hitting. The light is so much on the stage that every other characters that are not enacted in the play, they are also visible. So the audience fail to indulge themselves with the story. If
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
If it is not visible, sir,
Slides are not
the
visible.
screen has turned black. Yes, sir.
It's visible.
Yes, it is visible now. Thank you.
Okay, it's visible now.
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. So lighting, when I'm telling about lighting, it is that we all know that a movie is the result of 15 to 30, 40 or 6 months of work is going on. Actors are doing it using so many other ways, animation, 3D effect, and every other thing. If we see the backstage of Hollywood movies, then it's nothing like that Superman is roaming and Spider-Man is jumping. It's nothing like that. All the scenes are going on within a particular set, and the 3D effect is going on. If we show all those effects within the story also during the movie, will the movie create that kind of impact on the mind of the audience? No. It will create some kind of embarrassment. Oh, this is the way the story is, the plot is developed. This is the way we tend to believe that yes, Superman is fighting, Superman is roaming, Superman can fly. But in reality, if we show the reality, then we will think rationally. We will think from a rational point of view. So, by showing the backstage activities and by throwing light on those certain characters, which create some kind of distance created, and the audience can understand that this is a play, this is a movie, and all the things are fictitious, all the things are created by using third-party elements. We don't have to emotionally attach. I can still remember when I was also a kid, so many young children committed suicide after seeing Shaktiman. Jumped out of the roof so that Shaktiman could save them. They failed to understand that it's a kind of plot. Shaktiman can't fly. So by creating this kind of thing, he created, makes a emotional barrier between the audience and actors. At the same time, use of song, music, and dance. That some of his works include song, music, and dance. This is not those kind of songs, music, and dance to make audience give some kind of comic relief. It is to make them aware about what the situation is going on. This helps to remind the audience that they are not watching a real life. they are watching real life, real. And this helps to remind the audience that they are watching something that is juxtaposed ironically and the same time with cheesy upbeat music with dark lyrics. And one of the most famous song in the best three-man opera was that who is the bigger criminal, he who robs a bank, some kind of this. Then another term is the coming out of character. What is this? Actor will sometimes come out of character, often at heightened moment of drama, to remind the audience that it is a bit of fiction they're watching. It means still I can, if you have gone through the movies of Mrinal Sen, and particularly his Calcutta trilogy, Mrinal Sen was one of the famous Bengali movie film directors, and he directed films at the same time when Satyajit Ray was also doing his best. So, in his movie interview, the main actor was Ranjit Mallik, and during the course of the movie, Ranjit Mallik is telling that, look, I am Ranjit Mallik. Mrinal Sen has told me that I have to act here. He wants to show my daily activities. So what can I do? I'm an actor. I'm Ranjit Mallik. I'm telling. So Ranjit Mallik is acting in the movie, and he is telling that I am Ranjit Mallik, I am acting. That the actor comes out of his character and telling that, yes, I am the actor, I am playing, I am doing the role, to tell them that there is a story, fiction. And at the same time, if you go through the movies of Mrinal Sen, you will see some kind of effects of this. Then there is another term, that is freeze frames. What is the actor may go to the freeze frame so to break the action, and sometimes it's done so that the audience can stop and think critically for the moment to freeze the frame. And sometimes it's done so that the narrator can speak, or the actor can come out of the character and perhaps break the fourth wall. Now, I told you previously that two other important points, that is sparse and gestures. What is sparse? Sparse literally means that it means fun, and Brave wanted to make his audience think. He realized that while we are laughing, we are also thinking. So much so that the playwright Eugene called him as some kind of postman also, because he was always delivering messages. However, in Brechtian work isn't boring, and it's definitely not always serious either. Even if the messages itself, it is a serious, Brecht realized that the comedy should be an excellent way of engaging the audience and forcing them to think about issues. So space was also an excellent way to break the tension, some kind of. And Brecht needed to break the rising tension to stop the audience from following characters on their emotional journey. And it might be used in the form of a comic song, slapstick humor, physical comedy, or even a stand-up routine. It's a kind of silliness in effect, but often makes a strong social comment in the way it is used to treatment or some kind of serious object. And what is gestures? Gestures is another Brechtian technique. It is clear character gesture or movement or used by the actor that delving into emotion. It's a kind of animated way, like how I am telling also. My hands are moving. So every gesture was important on part of the actor and on part of the audience also. And Brecht and his actors started photographs of the play in rehearsal to ensure each moment worked effectively. And could the audience tell the actor gesture? Yes, the audience can tell that by seeing the gesture of the actor that what is going to happen in the scene. Now let me tell you the basic difference between dramatic and epic theatre. Dramatic theatre, there will be a plot, has a beginning, middle, and end, and issues raised in the play are resolved. It implicates the spectator in a stage situation, suggests to the spectator that they're watching real life in a dramatic theater, provides the audience with sensations, a theater of illusion with ideas reinforced. The spectator is involved in something, The spectator is in the thick of its shares and experience on all the things opposite in epic theater. And growth events follow each other in a smooth progress in dramatic theater. It's a kind of showing the importance of the real life and making audience emotionally attached within a dramatic theater. Then what is epic theater? Narrative begins anywhere, in continues and stops. Issues are not resolved. Turns the spectator into an observer, but suggests that the spectator can question what he or she is seeing. Forces the audience to take decision, makes it clear that they are the problems that must have to be solved on part of the audience. They have to think. The spectator is made to face something. The spectator stands outside and studies. Montage that I have already told. So, then what is the impact or aims and objectives of it? So aims and objectives of Brechtian theatre is to portray society as alterable, to portray human nature, to portray conflict, social conflicts, to portray human nature as dependent upon certain class struggle to show and where it belongs, to portray character as a genuine contradictions, and to make the dialectical method of looking at certain things in a pleasurable way, to capture the achievements of the classics in the, and to establish unity between realism and poetry, and to portray the development of the character, situation, events. So it's a kind of and while he's summing up the role of epic theatre, he sees that epic theatre can see the ultimate effect of drama as occurring outside the theatre, outside the norms. The play steeps up thought and incites the spectator to act for some kind of desirable social reform. So in this way, it escapes becoming an opiate and assumes a vital and productive role in men's life. So, according to Columbia Encyclopedia, a few hallmarks are there of epic poetry. I mean, let me tell you, and among them that it destroys the theatrical illusion. Here, author is the producer, maker of any project. Play the production style is commentary on society, comments on the society. Goal is to instigate social change. Socio-economical basis for theatre is the spectacle. Subject matter and audience involvement is there. Dialectical theatre, discord, and there will be jarring movements, and as a way of exploring ideas and how man's contradictory in nature. And its goal was supportedly by many theoretical writing for the spectator to be involved in a theatrical event, to observe objectively, ponder and develop certain critical detachment leading to social action. Now let me tell you. So what I have just discussed, this is the points also. So Brecht set out to change people's mind. He aimed to use theatre to show audience what was wrong with society and then convince them to go out and change it. Brecht's epic theatre was a way of presenting his political views. Note I highlighted this in a large font. Views influenced by Marxism and its belief that many of the world's problems are a result of capitalism. Types of human behavior were studied to show why they had happened and how the behavior could be improved. The plays tell stories in a way designed to make the audience feel they are simple. That means about him. He also altered the actor-audience relationship by encouraging them to think in an active and critical way. Sorry. And historification. It means which plays were always based on history. He wanted the audience to look at the present through the past and see both objectively, unemotionally, and with detachment. Now, for the PG students, I have given it. If they fail to understand also what's the basic difference between dramatic theatre and epic theatre, let me tell you, citing the example of the audience, of the spectator. The spectator of epic theatre are poles apart from that of dramatic theatre. the dramatic theater spectator says, yes, I have felt like to just like me, it's only natural, it will never change after seeing the movie, certain movies. The suffering of this man appall me because they are inescapable. There's great art. It seems the most obvious thing in the world. I weep when they weep. Not this line, I weep when they weep. I laugh when they laugh. While the epic theater spectator says, I would never have thought it. It's the kind of rational thinking is going on. That's extraordinary, hardly believe. It's got to stop. The suffering of this man appall me because they are unnecessary. There's great art, nothing obvious in it. I laugh when they weep. Note the difference. I laugh when they weep. I weep when they laugh. Apparently, the spectator of epic theater is expected to be more accountable and concerned in terms of social and political concerns. Now, let me tell you. So, this is the basic tenets of epic theater. Now, I have 3 more points to tell, which was actually my topic. That the alienation effect in Mother Courage and her children, power, knowledge, and resistance. Also, at the same time, Pratik, can I take another 30 minutes? Pratik?
Yes, of course.
Okay. But still, I will try to show you some of the glimpses of that. But before that, I also want to show the alienation effect in Mother Courage and her children. These are some of the images that all the scenes are going on in the stage. It's very much animating. In the stage, it is all going on. The backstage boys are also there. Everything is going. So before going to the Marxist reading of alienation, so I have told you that there are 2 kinds of alienation. One alienation is that dramaturgic alienation, that Bartol-based theory of alienation in relation to this text. That there is one particular theoretical intervention, and another one is Marxist reading of alienation. So at first, let me tell you some of the nuances of the alienation effect in Mother Courage. Now I will tell you precisely so that we can touch the nuances of it. So we all know that epic theater, it is developed in the 20th century, is primarily it is to make the distance from the from act to think and what is happening in reality. And in this play, the Mother Courage and her children, he distances the reader and the viewer with alienation effect, and singing songs to interrupt the drama of the play is a crucial part of the play to achieve this effect. Now I'm showing on some kind of story. Then in course of the story, in an attempt to steal the cash box from a Finnish regiment, Swiss is caught trying to hide the box, and when confronted, Mother Courage denies knowing he who was to try and protect him, and convince the sergeant that he was an honest boy, and switch is taken away. I am now telling some of the incidents that the play is interrupted by the song. So many songs are going on. The song of the hours also is sung to make us realize that the situation is more than just a scene in the play, but as a problem of the war also. So we no longer focus on Mother Courage panic for her son, but on the tragedy of the war on general, and on people also. And Mother Courage then thinks of a way to get her son out of the trouble he got into, and at the same time he needed to make up the money he stole by selling the only thing he had, her wagon. And he also then she then also decides not to sell the wagon, and in the course of thinking another way to make up the money, her son is killed. So many things are going on. We experience the brutality of the war throughout the death of Mother Courage children in a way where there is no empathy towards courage. We can see how obsessed she was with money and her business, and that prevents the audience from sympathizing with her. Yes, it prevents the audience from sympathizing with her at the moment of her son's death, because she is constantly doing her business, and she has to run after her family. Her sons and daughters are killed, and at the same time she is selling what kind of mothers is the audience is thinking, but at the same time the audience is thinking what's the reason behind it, why she is not weeping, why she is not leaving this business, because to run after the family she is within the entanglement of a capitalist society where power operates and where her knowledge fails to um, uh, give her the primal realization of the biopower that Foucault told in his archaeology of power. That will, if time permits, I will tell you a bit. And so in epic theater allows us to make a step back and make us realize that Sweet Tease was killed because of 30 years of work, not just because of his actions and of his mother's action. So, and at the same time, after the death of her son, we anticipate the following scene to be grieving of mother, but the unrelated scene in the play that doesn't allow the audience to have an emotional reaction. So, if we go through that Michael McKeon's article, and that Mother Courage was an epic, it is an epic to take on the what role. He stated that the epic theater, it is some kind of contents loosely connected with scenes with the actors directly address the audience. It's actually to show the anti-war elements, and this loosely connected scenes to what I think can the scenes that the part of that makes the epic theater, and instead of focusing on the sadness of the loss of an individual, we get to see the bigger picture of it. And what is the overall message of this, of the alienation effect in the play? Brecht didn't believe in war, and he wanted to inform of the atrocity and suffering in those long years of battle. Because of this and because of his recent flee from the invasion of Hitler, he was motivated to express his thoughts, and at the same time from an emotional connection with his characters, but helped us to analyze the consequence of war. So in his theory of theater, to some extent, Brecht developed an alienation effect, a concept that broke severally with the dominant Aristotelian dramaturgy in many ways, and it also rejects the traditional function of art and Aristotle. At the same time, his conception of mimesis, catharsis, and unified plot are here deconstructed, and this theory stems from dialectical materialism, a philosophical system that necessarily breaks the Aristotelian logic and is based around the need for art to be actively involved in changing the world rather than merely imitating it. So, seeing catharsis as a mean by which tragedy demobilizes its audience and reinforces bourgeois ideology. And Brecht uses this alienation effect as a means of distancing the audience and actors from the play's action to point certain critical reflection in the play that comes more originally than uncritical emotional behavior. And at the same time, this alienation effect achieved through such methods as a disunity of narrative structure and unnatural perception and representation of certain characters, betraying Aristotle's unity of action and this concept of mimesis respectively. So now, before going into the Marxist reading of alienation, let me tell you also give a very briefing for my students. Later, they can explore it from this perspective. Marx defines alienation. So, till now, I have discussed the nuances of epic theater, the impact of alienation or V effect, the mechanics that are used to create that V effect, and how that V effect is created within the play. So till now, I have given Brechtian theoretical interpretation of the play. Now I am going to do a Marxist and a Foucauldian reading in a very precise way. So what is Marxist reading of alienation? Now I am reading the slide to make my students a bit connected. Now I want to make them connect better. Marx defines alienation as personal and political. With regard to personal alienation, Marx offers the symptoms which include the types of feeling that an alienated individual experiences. These are such feelings as powerlessness, meaninglessness, normlessness, and estrangement. With regard to political With regard to political alienation, Marx identifies 4 factors that cause alienation. They are man's relation to his product, his productive activity, other man, and the species. In the course of the journey, in the play, Mother Courage, the main character of Brecht's play, Mother Courage and her children, fails to provide her children financial security because of a socio-psychological state defines Marx as alienation. Mother Courage attempting to maintain secure financial profit leads to a tragic failure. Because her endeavor fails to the Marxist category of alienated labor, Mother Courage pays a heavy price by losing all her children for profit. Now, what is the concept of alienation? In Marx's view, alienation is a symptom of the industrial age and of capitalism. Means, if you don't have money, naturally you will be alienated from society. Mother Courage doesn't have money, so he had to earn money. And in course of earning that, he was alienated from her children. Her children got killed. Very simple. A worker on a production line sees only the part of the work that he is involved with. Look at this picture. This is the man symbolizing the capitalist figure. He is there, and so many proletariat are there trying to pull or break the chain, but it is not possible. They are hanging, and this man is sitting there. This man is sitting there, and he is just enjoying what is going on, what is happening. Alienation in Marx theory. What is that? Alienated from how? Objects produced do not own what they produce. Process of production. Work satisfy needs of the capitalist themselves. Monotonous work limits growth and potential, fellow workers, and 4 aspects of alienation there. Because of time constraint, I'm unable to show, but there are so many mathematical interpretation of it. If there were some other day, I will show you how Mother Courage can be read from a mathematical point of view. 4 aspects of alienation. In capitalism, workers become alienated and separated from labor product, labor process. They are the social being and the other people. Alienation that is separation of yourself, the product of your labor from other people, from yourself, from nature, origins, this condition or material, how things are produced, and Marx's concept of alienation. And this is what I was trying to tell from a mathematical point of view. So let me tell you, for my students, the basic to tell them that how alienation works. And so according to Marx's concept, there are 4 kinds of alienation. First, with regard to man's relation to the product, that the alienation is caused by the separation of the worker from the product of his labor. And when the worker has no control over the product he produces, instead products are controlled by the capitalist. So I am creating this laptop and it is sold by another person. So I don't have any authority over this laptop that I have created. So I have become alienated from the very product that I created. Look at the irony. Second, what is alienation? Alienation in terms of the process of production, which is concerned with the fact that the work provides no satisfaction but is only a source of physical exhaust and mental debasement of the worker. Marx allocates a particular place to man's relationship to his activity. Thus, the consciousness of which man has the activity is further transformed in a way that the species life become a means for him, and man's consciousness is used to direct the effect for survival. Thirdly, there are another 2 points that I want to tell you, that the worker is alienated from other human being also due to dissolution of human relationship and social bonds. And finally, Marx makes the proposition that under capitalism, man's nature as a species is alienated in the sense that mankind is alienated from another. Moreover, he elaborates on the feeling of estrangement also, which occurs due to the social structure that deny human nature to change or perform actively in cooperation with others. So in course of the journey, this kind of alienation creates some kind of identity crisis. And this kind of identity crisis is very much within the play. this capitalist, everything is within the play, that the mother is alienated because she may lose her canteen to provide the ransom to rescue Swiss cheese. And mankind's alienation in that context is considered as one major psychological effect of capitalism, and mother carriage have to do continuously. And it means that this kind of alienation provides the relationship of mother carriage to her work and to the state and to her mind herself. She established a way of profit to provide a way for herself and her children's consumption. This establishment of her stands over and above her. So in an enclosed space where mother carriage does business, she becomes a subject. She becomes a subject that dances to the tune of the capitalist. Mother carriage becomes the subject, and she is dancing around the capitalist who are compelling her to dance. It's like the dance of the dead man is going on. Dead people are going on. The capitalist, I mean, those are who hold power about the war. They are there to indulge other within the war as a kind of maintaining control and dominance over other bodies. So the soldier determined the war which brings order. At the same time, at the beginning of the play, the sergeant says that war is the order of the world, and it is at the same time is and this system and the so many other bodies are seized by this system, and it doesn't remain within the producer by means of the forced transfer of property, which means the authorities can gain control over others. So it means by controlling others, I am creating a certain group alienated. And at the same time, Brecht considers war as a crime. He considers because this is a kind of war crime. Mother courage has an incorrigible belief that she can create something out of that, but she failed to do that. So in course of the journey, we see that so many things are going on, and mother courage has nothing to do. She failed. So that under the devastating impact of alienation as a capitalist production, both in it seems that they are alienated, and at the same time there is a kind of identity crisis which deals around the sensual experience of the subjective what's of loss and sense of belonging and utility in mankind's social environment as a consequence of living in a capitalist society and in a larger zone. So we are alienated. At the same time, we have become political, and we as a mankind seeing to the level of a wretched community now we are. And since the harder courage labors and the more she produces, the more miserable she becomes. The more courage she shows, the more miserable she becomes. So it's about the mother courage. She is showing the courage, but she is losing the authority of the mother. She is not the mother anymore. All her children were killed. So look at the dichotomy between the title, mother and courage. And at the same time, from personal alienation, she doesn't experience herself to be the active bearer of her power, but she is in some kind of impoverished community, and she maintains a way of profit to provide a way for herself and her children. But in course of the journey, her courageous way of consumption results in the fact that she is never satisfied. So her belief in war so that she can get a chance, she can get share as much as rulers become. She becomes some kind of more inhuman, where a business with the work causes her children death and her exploitation. So in course of the journey, this alienation makes a certain human being also inhuman, because to run within this capitalist society and that only depends on certain money, and her exploitation drives from a dependence on the rulers by whose help she attains more consumption. And she is also telling that I want this war that should be go on for an endless time so that I can earn money. So this is the ultimate statement of a society, of a capitalist society within a capitalist state, capitalist space. This kind of work is going on. So from political alienation, mother courage can be shown as a kind of politically alienated, and the harder she works throughout the play to earn money, the more miserable and wretched she has become, and she is politically alienated, and she had no chance to compete with the authorities. She failed to do that, and her courage sells her power to the master of the capital, which threatens the livelihood of her and of her children. So capitalism not only brutalizes Mother Courage herself, but it makes her at the same time greedy to gain more profit, and to gain more profit out of the consumption of the things she's selling. As a result, she loses all her children in the quest of her journey, and she becomes completely alienated from her motherhood. So this is the concept of Marxist concept of alienation. Now let me tell you the concept of power, knowledge, and resistance. But before going that, I have to tell my PG students about certain historical context, because without historical context, it becomes sometimes tough for them to understand the nuances of it. Wait a minute. Others to Pothik?
Yes, I'm
Pothik, are
here.
you there?
Yes.
Students are able to understand what I'm trying to convey. I'm not
Hope
able to
so.
see any kind of comments or
Hope so that they have understood what you are trying to convey to them.
Okay.
In fact, it's really a student-friendly lecture.
Thanks. So now let me tell you some kind of historical context. Yes, because whenever we need to decode a certain text, we have to know the historiography behind it. It is very much important. So based as a political playwright with interest in exposition and discussion of the failing of society in his epic theater, I'm reading, incorporated his tempestuous contemporary socio-political and socio-economic context into his play Mother Courage and Her Children, and the mark of the Holocaust, both the post and pre-war Germany. You have to know the terms, the Holocaust and pre-post-war, the political, socio-political activities of pre and post-war Germany. The flourishing of Marxism and the resistance of the working class can be seen in the themes, characters, tone, and the setting of the play. Mother Courage and Her Children is an episodic play about war and resilience. Draws strength and meaning from the chaos in which it was first produced and convinced. Let me tell you, these are the now I'm telling about the historiography of this play. This is the map of Germany 1938. Look at the way Germany has captured the rest of Europe, and the red portions are unable to decode the context of map behind this play because of time constraints. And some kind of there. So before into power and play of power and resistance, let me tell you something about that story behind it. Naturally, there are 2-3 things that we must have to remember. That the play is purely historical in nature, and this is the play was written and first produced in 1940, first in Europe, and that time the world at large seems upside down, and this homeland Germany has seen some kind of tremendous social and political change after World War I and the rise of the Nazi Party and the participation of the Holocaust surrounding these events. Most of the were engaged in Germany in the Second World War. So, having been exiled from Germany from his political views, outspoken nature and opposition, had to break residents in the United States at the same time. Mother Courage and Her Children is a product of the time. So you can understand the interplay of some kind of memory, or some kind of that is also going on at the back of our mind, and that play is the production of that. And so it's greatly colored by what and of the Holocaust as well as the prevalence of Marxism and its own political philosophy throughout Europe. And this socio-political and socio-economic factors, the Nazi Party and the plight of the workers, custodian of the, and at the same time, let me tell you that the socio-political context of the tragedy of the Holocaust greatly influenced the theme and tone of the play. So Mother Courage and the children were in the early 1940s, the early World War II, and after almost a decade of the systematic Nazi German operation and the annihilation of inferior members of the, look at inferior members of the society. Who are inferior? Mother Courage, that mother and her sons and her children. So and namely the Jews also. So the play that is set in the 1600 during the 30 Years' War, it somehow encapsulates the perpetual horror and terror of the Nazi Germany, and at the same time the Holocaust is a definite illustration of the human capacity for evil and atrocity, and the notion of this felt substantially within the play's tone, and the date of mother's sons are arbitrary, and in terms of the story it is meaningless because it should be done with the capitalist of the society. And Mother Courage travels through carnage in encountering selfish as well as spineless and faceless soldiers in course of the journey who dole out to their chaos and hardship at random. So here throughout the play, the male characters are also shown as a kind of selfish, as a kind of spineless and faceless soldiers, and courage. Mother has the courage. The soldiers lack it, and courage even experienced some kind of imprisonment firsthand with all the suffering raining down from the anonymous unholy power. And the power is not about some kind, I'm talking about some kind of divinity, but this power is some kind of rather man-made, and all of the perpetual suffering in this place is to some extent brought out by the human hands. So this senseless is to some extent ubiquitous in the play, and setting a tone of fear and some kind of futility that mirrors the inexplicable genocide of the German Holocaust. So in course of the journey, we will come to know that socio-economic issue that left behind the mark in the play also, in that resistance of the working class that I am now trying to talk about. This is abundantly clear also in the themes of the play. And when the Nazi Party rose to the power in 1933, they banned some kind of independent unions, and they are also catalyzing an onslaught of working class resistance to the Nazis, and the working class united on the grounds of common economic experience also, as they want a tradition of class solidarity and a shared hatred of fascism at the same time. So Courage's main obstacle in the play was it's about to challenge and establish a sustain herself of her own labor, that yes, I am doing it, I am challenging ideas of fascism, and at the same time I have that courage to lose all my sons. At the same time I have that courage to show that yes, I have lost because I have to earn money. This is the capitalist society that made me selfish, that made me something like Lady Macbeth event. So this obstacle parallels the obstacles of suppressed and rebelling and working class who force the individual isolation, and it's some kind of fought against the human authorities and subduing them, and at the same time the corruption of the Nazi political economy on the whole. So but its characterization and circumstances mimic the resistance and the working class in Germany. So based in this kind of historical and political background, with an interest to exposition and discussion of the failing of the society in his epic theater, he incorporated his tempestuous contemporary socio-political and socio-economic context into the play Mother Courage and Her Children. And the mark of the Holocaust, and both the pre and post-war Germany, the flourishing of Marxism and some kind of resistance while it is going on part of the working class, can be seen same character and so many other places. And And if you, for my students, yeah, if you want to read more about this kind of political, socio-political history of the Nazi Party, so you can go through that Patricia Brodsky book that is on the hidden war, working class resistance during the Third Reich and the post-war suppression of Germany, and to some extent that you have to read all those post-war iconographies written by Caroline Rupert, and so many other names. I will tell you later if you want those names. So now, before going to that last part of my talk, let me tell you what is power, what is knowledge, what is resistance. So there's a three-part picture. My slides are visible, I guess. So this is power and resistance. Okay, look at this. And the first peak, courage, and her last daughter. What is this? It's a leg is there, only the fingers are there, and it is playing. It means the death toll is playing. Mother Courage is singing the song of the death people. And look at the picture. Resistance is going on. She is still trying to move her card. Now she is left. Previously, she has 2, 3, 4 daughters and sons to help her. Now she is all alone. So, what is power and what is knowledge? Let us now go into the Foucauldian world. Welcome all. It's about power and knowledge, and where the whole paradigm is shifted within that context. So, what is power? The idea truth is produced by power. If you want to go through more about power, knowledge, and resistance, you have to go through Discipline and Punish, Archaeology of Power. You have to go through all these texts. And what counts as knowledge differs across societies and across time. Foucault argues that the idea of progress is illusionary. Knowledge doesn't make one free. Each society has its own truth discourse, and which presupposes some social relationships. What we think as of Western progress is really just another form of domination and control. We replace our one experience of reality with another. So knowledge is always made possible by a will to power, according to Nietzschean term, and knowledge is a form of power. And Foucault adopts Nietzsche's radical perspective, and the individual is an effect of the power. And we have to read both Foucault and Nietzsche to understand the dichotomy and how power and knowledge work within the same periphery. And the Enlightenment was not at the same time emancipated. We have to remember. So within this diagram, power that establishes institutions, school, hospital, prison, pursuit subjects, it incites, provoke, produced in terms of knowledge to some extent. Yes, that power is also giving us knowledge. At the same time, suppose this is a talk. If this talk has the power, it is within my power to show you the slides or something that all of you are now there. The students are there. At the same time, it is also catering knowledge. And at the same time, it is actualizing and mobilizing and stabilizing a certain kind of resistance also. And so this is the basic way how the power and institution and knowledge is what. And while there is power, there will be resistance. So, however, Foucault points out that where there is power, there is resistance. From an ideological point of view, identities are constructed by the ruling classes to oppress the particular members of the society. That is youth, obviously. And this power over them keeps them in their places. They are constrained within the boundaries of that identity unless there is resistance. And you have to read that. I have given the basic chart of that archaeology of power, where the genealogy of power is operated through biopower and more precisely through panopticon. Now, I don't have time today to discuss about panopticon and biopower also. So, power for Foucault is about circularity of power. Everyone, the powerful and the powerless, caught up. That is not even on equal terms in power circulation. And where there is power, there is resistance, and like power, resistance is to be found everywhere. This is points of resistance are present everywhere in the power network. Hence, there is no single focus of great refusal, no soul of revolt, source of art, all rebellions of pure law of the revolutionary that I have taken from the history of sexuality also. So to some extent, what it is, yeah, it is about that interplay of power and knowledge, and Mother Courage, the main character of them that let's play, failed to support her children financially because of a socio-psychological state defined as that is a lack of knowledge. Her lack of knowledge, she failed to understand that how to save my children also, and as a result she pays a heavy price by losing all her children in the quest of profit. Mother Courage is ignorant of the extant power struggle and gives priority to profit rather than to her children. So I think that she acts as a a profiteer, and doesn't she have that required knowledge in order to able to exercise her own subversive power against that kind of rural class. But her journey of pulling that card at the end, it leans to two separate aspects of power and knowledge, and power and uh, resistance within the same play. So it's a kind of play where we can see certain political aspect, and at the same time, let me tell you that within that Foucauldian discourse of power deals with the powerless state and represented in the smallness of the capital, of our capital, shows the danger of being impoverished because she is too exploited, she is dehumanized. And the argument is that her failure to save the children results from her state of powerlessness, and this powerlessness means she has very little share in this whole distribution of power within that society, which ends in the loss of her own children. So Mother Courage's unconscious submission to that call of ideology, what I term as the call of ideology, is the source of her submission to that unequal distribution of the power and wealth in the setting of the war. And that ideology binds that also binds Mother Courage so far as to make her accept her own fate, and that ideology also enables her to earn profit within a particularly capitalistic framework environment that also limits her own kind of resistance, and it results in the loss of her children. So Mother Courage is basically a powerless one to resist those forces which limit or to channel her life. And so this kind of her lack of knowledge that she is ignorant of the fact that her lives and works are going on within a certain power struggle, and she acts as a war prophet, and she failed to do certain contextual thing within that power struggle. But as a result, out of this powerlessness, she rises about a certain kind of domination, and because it's all power is dominating, and to some extent she becomes a kind of subject that not only exercise power consciously but created to power delusion. In other words, she become a power passive object, and in that passive object she becomes some kind of subjectivity within herself, and this subject can be opposed to the interest of the power that works within the play. So to some extent, I can tell that I am not going to elaborate this because it's a bit lengthy, but within the course of the journey I will urge the students to read about how the system of capitalism urges Mother Courage to become a kind of selfish woman, how her concept of alienation, Marxist concept of alienation, or not only gave her that kind of power to resist, but at the same time make her powerless also. So it's a kind of dichotomy, and throughout the journey overall, this power, her lack of knowledge, which rises within the working notion of power, and the main and how she become resistant by also losing everything at the same time. She is trying to do that same journey. It's a kind of that a journey of Sisyphus, where that she gave her abstract existence a certain meaning, and this certain meaning is the resistance. This is create some kind of resistance for her. So the main character, Mother Courage, she is the breadwinner of the family. Although she failed to provide for her children financially by offering food, but this largely because she was powerless. And and borrowing from the words of Foucault, that I think that she was powerless because of her lack of knowledge, and her lack of knowledge means she was ignorant of that extant power struggle. At the same time, she acted as a war profiteer, and at the same time, she didn't realize that in a capitalist society, those at the top of the hierarchy of power, they have the knowledge and power, and therefore they have a real chance of profiting from the war. So furthermore, she didn't have that required knowledge in order to able to exercise her own subversive power structure against the ruling class. So becoming the so within that lack of power or lack of knowledge, she rises within the periphery of capitalistic power to create some kind of resistance in her absurd life. And as a result, she paid the price by not only losing the children in the quest of profit, but at the same time, she resisted against that certain kind of capitalist structure of the society. That's it. Thank you.
Hello, Dada. Am I audible?
Okay, let me.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello,
You are-
Dada. I mean Ivana. Thank you so much, Dada, for the wonderful explanation. I have a query. In a degraded world caused by war, feelings are also to be swept aside. As you have already mentioned, that motherhood is also deformed. Right. So, from a detached and alienated point of view, the audiences are also not allowed to be emotionally involved in epic theater criteria. Right.
Yes.
So, I have a query that whereas we see in Coleridge's concept, willing suspension of disbelief, where the audience switched off its critical faculties in order to believe in the world of the play. So, Dada, can we say these two concepts are absolutely polar opposites?
Within this, first of all, thanks for this interesting question. First of all, let me tell you that this kind of alienation effect or the fee effect allows the spectator or the audience to show the rationality behind this kind of observation. And willing suspension of disbelief, it is obviously there. The audience, they have to remember the fact that everything is going on according to the script. It is real life that is enacting. It is not the real life. So taking that, and to some extent, this is not the willing suspension of disbelief that Coleridge was trying to convey. He told that yes, we have to believe what is there going on. We have to stop our rationing faculty. But here he told that the polar opposite, yes, we have to open our rational faculty to understand what is going on. So it's a kind of polar opposite. So we can say that yes, if we tell that Coleridge's poems are supernatural, he tells his readers also not to ask anything, why the things are going on, why the creatures are dead or alive in the rhyme of Ancient Mariner, or what is the role of Geraldine within the context. Here, always, Brecht is telling his audience to ask, to think why this is going on and what to do to change the scenery.
Okay. Another observation I have, if you permit, may I ask?
Yes.
Most of the characters related to epic theater are not given names, but the titles related to their jobs, such as cook, then chaplain, then soldier, etc. So,
Yes.
can we say that this was created to generalize or universalize the problems presented by the play?
Yes, to some extent, and at the same time that I have mentioned earlier that there are multiple changing of the actors, and the same the cook. The cook is not the same actor throughout the play. It is changed, and all the characters have changed their name, their role, their position. It is everything is changed to make some kind of effect on part of that listeners, on part of the audience, and at the same time to show them that yes, we are also, the whole system is under this capitalist clutch, and we have to think the cook, the Swiss chef, the mother, Catherine, all are there under the operation of power, and that is why it is not a story of a particular human being. It is a universal story, and he is telling that he's actually trying to propagate his anti-war view based, and that is why he has given this kind of paradigm.
That means we can include generalization or universalization
Yes,
as
to some
a
extent,
feature
war-
in epic theater.
Yes. Actually, whenever the story, any kind of story that is telling about the onslaught of war, the basic motive behind is to show how war is destroying certain young promising lives. It is not to show the glory of war, but it is show the devastating impact of war. So it's a kind of generalization to show what war can create within a society. It can destroy a society that has been built for many years within a few years. So it's a kind of urge on part of Brecht to those warmongers of capitalist society to think twice before engaging themselves within a war for their own personal benefit.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ada, for the wonderful lecture. Thank you.
From one of our students, Parthu Pratim Dev, he asked 3 questions. What is alienation effect in literature? Why Brecht had created Smokers Theatre? Why Brecht had admired Charlie Chaplin?
Okay. To some extent, let me tell you that it had Charlie Chaplin to some comical effect, I can say. But apart from that, let me again read the question. He admired Charlie Chaplin only to show that there are certain comical way also to deal with the struggle of the society, to deal in a better way with the evils and odds within the society. And that alienation effect is very much present in literature also. But to those plays, to those dramas, to those novels that wants to decode certain things in a very alienated way and according to the Brechtian way, that wants to decode certain political message. And at the same time, I can tell you that this kind of literature is very much present within other dramaturgy also, where they are trying to show that audience shouldn't get involved within the very periphery of the characters, and they want to think rationally of why this kind of play or dramas or works are going on. And that is why now, to some extent, here in our web series also, we can see that so many stories are ended without giving the answer. If audience have to speculate, audience are thinking, and at the same time they are waiting, and they are also trying to show. Look at this time period. So many episodes are there. So many web series are there on that collection of gangs in UP and Bihar, to show that this is one of the problems of India, where the war between two other gangs, where the corruption, the crime rate is extremely high. And so it is within that periphery to make people understand that why these things are going on, and that is why it is represented within the literature also, within the web series also. And the third question, that why Brecht has created Smokers Theatre, that I have to think it. What's the reason behind it? But to some extent, as far as I know, all his purpose was to show the society within his own periphery in his own way and show people some kind of everlasting impact about those traumatic events and wounded narratives on part of those audience who are listening. It's some kind of creating post memory effect according to Hearts, this kind of post memory and audience generation after generation will try to think that what are the ways can we think can from. Any more question?
Is there any other question from any of our participants? Probably not. Is there any question from YouTube, Janto?
There is a question regarding the subjective and objective approach to a performance and the concept of breaking the fourth wall. The question is from Milani Changda. She asked, so why Brecht preferred to break the fourth wall as it is a figment of imagination?
Yes, Brecht has to break that fourth wall because he doesn't want to get his audience involved directly with the story, with the plot. There's some kind of emotional distance that should be maintained. That is why, and that by breaking the fourth wall, that audience can directly see what is going on in the stage. So they can see that it is the acting is going on. It is the real life is going on. And the actors are only playing according or telling according to the script. So they will not relate themselves within the story, and at the same time they will think what made the actors to act in this way, what made the producer or the director to write this, what is the basic reason behind creating this kind of play or novel, or what is the basic need of showing this kind of atmosphere or creating this kind of atmosphere within that stage. So it's a kind of creating an impact on part of the on part of the director and actor upon the audience. So this is kind of breaking the fourth wall, so that at the same time they are engaging and the same time they are also creating a distance. So in a very subtle way, the whole act is going.
Thank you, Dr. Karmakar, for such an informative talk. And let us move towards the Thanksgiving session. And before that, I would like to, obviously on behalf of the whole organizing team, I would like to apologize to interrupt you in the middle of the session. But I would like to say that first of all, I would like to say that you obviously thank you for giving us your kind consent to deliver a lecture in our lecture series, and obviously it's a matter of great pleasure to hear your speech, and I think our students will be benefited a lot after hearing your lecture. You almost touched every aspect of Brechtian philosophy, obviously alienation, power, everything, epic theater, everything. I hope they will gain a lot from your lecture. Thank you again for such a beautiful presentation. And at last, I would like to thank all the participants for their kind cooperation. And with these words of greeting, I would like to end the session here. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.